I will be explaining how a program is set up and what is required to move a program from setup to production. In addition, I will be sharing some information around what notifications will be sent to the program mailbox for each of your accounts so that you know how to act on things such as potential lost in transit, negative signature verification letter, or acknowledgement of content requiring investigation. The very first piece of setting up a new program is your program business rules. We have established program business rules for the Simplicity DTP program. They can be found on SharePoint under the service offerings, business service offerings, and then you'll see the folders. Within the folders, you'll have your folder for commercial, which is Nipper Direct, your direct to practitioner, your direct to rep, or otherwise known as My Rep Center, My Sample Closet, and then UAT documentation. For the purpose of this training, I am going to reference the DTP. If you click into the DTP folder, you'll see configuration documents, you'll see your email templates, your reference documents, your report templates, and your SRF and letter templates. As mentioned, there's also a business rule template available out on SharePoint as well. In addition to creating your drafted business rules, because configurations are now done by the professional services team, specifically Kathy and Joe, you will be required to complete a configuration sheet. This configuration sheet is what is used by the team that will complete the configuration and also required for verification either by the testing team or by your manager. Every program that is configured does require a configuration sheet as well as a post-configuration report, which I will show you within the system. In this configuration sheet, there are several tabs, including the revision history. It will be important that you keep your revision history up to date every time this document is updated. You'll talk about your program profile information, whether it's an institution program, a sales rep program, etc. You'll provide the brand information, the product information. This product information that's filled out here must match what's in Scale, as the Simplicity DTP system will pull your product details directly from Scale. Your validation rules. What rules do you want to apply to the program? It'll also talk about what the rule level is. Is it an order level rule or a product level rule? As well as if these rules apply to paper or electronic orders only. You'll also have the action you want to take for those rules. Do you want to put the order into mitigation? Do you want to send a letter? So each program that you create, you'll fill out a section of how you want to handle the exception and rejections, as well as auto includes. Auto includes can be done at the product level, brand level, or order level. So you'll fill in each each auto include rule and the details of that auto include. You'll also talk about order fulfillment, what actions you want to take from an order fulfillment perspective. Inventory and select day, as well as your AOC rules, your signature verification rules, and the details of your sample request form. If you'll notice that this configuration sheet will match pretty closely to the configuration page within the Simplicity DTP team. So it's very important that this information is accurate and complete before passing this off to the team that will be doing the setup for your program. These rules must also match exactly to what your business rules say. Any update to your business rule will require an update to this configuration. Okay, let's get started. So when you're setting up a program for the first time, once you have your business rules and your configuration sheet done, we will take a review of those documents and confirm for accuracy. It is important that your manager also review those documents, as they will be required to sign off on this before any program is moved into production. In this example, I am going to use a program that I've previously set up. And first, I'm going to go to the details of what a draft versus a live program is. Every time we do a setup, whether it's a first-time setup or a change to a pre-existing program, you have to do that in a draft form. The system will not take any changes from a version that is already live, a version that is retired, or even a version that has previously been deleted. You can only have one draft and one live version of a program configuration at a time. And if you notice here, I've already created a draft. And then once a draft is created and once it's validated through the system, this push live button will be available. The person who does the configuration is not authorized to be the person who pushes the draft live. So that will actually be a second person who has the permission to do that function. When you push a draft live, you have two options. You could push the draft live immediately, or you can schedule the draft to go live at a future date. An example of that would be if your client chooses to have the program set up by the end of December, but that does not want to push the program live until January or February of the following year, we can go ahead and complete the program, do the verification, have it signed off, and you can schedule your draft to go live. And then on that date, the system will be pushing that latest draft into production. At any time that there is a draft scheduled for production, you cannot make any changes to the configuration without aborting the draft. And then there will be a banner that will represent that the draft is pending production release. So once you create the draft, the team will go through each of these sections on the left-hand navigation. So they will fill in any program or enter in any program logos, any program configuration comments. As I mentioned, we'll pull your products in from Scale. So at this point, you would go and select the products that have been pulled in from Scale to determine it, and apply them to the individual program that's being created. If you notice, you'll see here orderable product, auto include products, select a product, SOD product. As you're creating the products, before you create the program, you'll be asked whether this product should be available for ordering. What that means is it'll be available for sample request form, as well as any electronic orders that are coming in, and will be available for you to apply business rules against them, as well as auto includes. The next tab is around auto included product. When you're creating this product, if you want this product to be available for selection when you're doing the auto include rules, you would check that off for during the product setup. Select day shipping. An item has to be set up as select day shipping in order for it to be visible when you get to your select day processing. And then SOD. If you want the item to be available for selection when you're doing your lettered templates and your sell sheets, you would select that item for SOD. This way, you can have it become available as an auto include for your SOD or your PDMA letters that will be sent out from the small orders department. At any time during the configuration, you can view reference data. If you need to add another product, you can search for that product by any of these filters, and it will pull in the product that's needed. If you notice down in this lower right-hand corner, you'll see the Validate Configuration button. You'll see that through the entire configuration pages. It'll allow you to verify that you have completed or each of these pages. Otherwise, you'll get a red error if anything is incomplete or missing. It is important that you validate the configuration before you push a draft live. If that is not complete, the draft to production will not be available. The next thing you do in the setup process is determine your order sources. So you can choose which order sources you want to be available for the program. An order source is how the order is coming to Nipper. Is the order coming to Nipper via paper, via SFA, otherwise Viva or IQVIA? Is it coming in through the contact center? Is it coming in through My Sample Closet? Is it coming in through an order file? So during the configuration and when you're completing the configuration sheet, you would share how we expect to get those orders. If your program is going to have the same business rules across your order sources, then you can set them up as a single program. If your program is going to have variable business rules and different reporting based on your order source, then you would set them up as a separate program. For example, if your MySampleCloset orders will have different business rules than your Viva orders, and the expectation is they would show up as separate reports, you would do that as a separate program as opposed to a single program with multiple order sources. Order sources are very, very similar to an order channel. You would also set up your paper source. So within a single program, you can have one Nipper source. That Nipper source can be either blank or pre-printed. Pre-printed means that Samplicity DTP will print the information onto the sample request form. That is done either from offer data that is fed to Nipper or by the target file on the first time you upload that target file. In addition, you can have one-to-many third-party forms. Those third-party forms are used here for reference, but they are not used to print any sample request forms that are produced from the system. An example of that would be, an example to add another source is by clicking that button, and then you can see that the only option right now I have is to do a third-party form because I've already used the Nipper form previously. Once you go past your order sources, then you would go to your order validation rules. There are 3 sections within your order validation rules. You have your missing values. So by default, KID is always a required field. KID is the Nipper identification number that we will create upon receipt of any HTTP record, order record, or offer record. From here, you can determine which rules you would like to apply for each section of the order validation rules. There are some requirements when selecting an item. We will show you the default print reason. You do have the ability to change that print reason if you choose. If there is no print reason available, that means that rule will not show up on your letter. So an example of that would be practitioner target ID. We're not sending an exception letter to the HCP, letting them know the target ID is missing because target ID is an internal field between Nipper and the client. If you choose not to apply missing rules, then you would uncheck the box for the rule that you don't want to be verified during order processing. Once you've selected your missing values, then you go to your SLA and DEA and SAN. SAN is secondary authorization. Today we track that for the Ohio TDDD number. At any point, you can view the reference data. So in this example, the program was set up as a rep-driven program. It is not an institutional program, and the order sources that I've selected for this example are order file, paper, and Salesforce. Another way to say that is Viva. Again, you would pick the rules that would be required. It is important to know that these rules are required for SLN if Nipper is expected to do the validation. All validation is done through Assure, but is still required for us to go ahead and apply the validation rules. In this example here, we also have the ability to do a secondary rule. So if this rule is selected and a secondary rule is required, it will show up in the second box. Very similar to DEA. If your program does not have any DEA products, you should not select any DEA validation rules. And finally, your secondary authorization number, TDDD. It is required for us to validate this TDDD number if we are shipping to Ohio. And the last section of the program configuration order validation rules is your order validation restrictive conditions. The restrictive conditions will show you really your overall program business rules outside of SLND and DEA. So here you can choose which rules you want to apply. If the rule is grayed out, it means it's an automatic check and not something you can turn on and off by program. Your exceeded territory allocation and exceeded practitioner allocation, these two rules only apply if you're going to use the allocation portal in parallel to your Samplicity DTP. So if we're going to manage allocation, which is order limits over a period of time, then you would do that through the allocation portal and apply these two business rules. As mentioned, here's a couple additional examples of rules that require the secondary rule. In this one example, professional designation, you would then select from a predefined list which professional designations you would like to have restricted from the program or included in the program. So again, this information must match exactly to what's on your configuration sheet and also what's in your business rules. Once you're done with your order validation rules, you'll move on to your order processing rules. There are 3 sections within order processing. You have your priority and your post validation rules, which is what happens to the order after passes the validation rules. Your auto includes, how to apply your auto includes, and then your inventory, what to do with your inventory based on the what to do with your order based on the inventory levels, as well as you're going to apply select day verification and select day shipping. So let's start with priority and post validation. This priority program is a permission-driven rule and will be determined by management whether the program qualifies for a priority program. As referenced on that configuration sheet I showed earlier in the presentation, you do have the ability by the order sources that were configured for your program how you want to handle any exception. Do you want to mitigate? Do you want to send a letter? Or do you want to take no action? And no action means that we will process that rule, but we will not send out any communication. It will show, that reason will show up on your master activity report. You can pick a different reason for each order source that's configured for your program. Your validation expiration, you can set number of calendar days that you want an order to sit in that exception status before it moves to exception expired. Rejection actions. Again, by order source, you can determine whether or not you're going to send a letter or not send a letter. Notice that mitigation is not an option. Any rules that are defined as in a rejection rule within our system will automatically be sent for rejection. We do not have the ability to mitigate rejected orders, and rejected orders are a terminal status. And then finally, any orders that fall into a hold pattern, how long do you want those orders to sit on hold? Today within Samplicity, your order will go on hold for outstanding acknowledgement of content. The next section we'll go through are your auto includes. Well, if there are any auto include products configured for your program, then you will have the ability to configure an auto include. Finally is your select day and your inventory verification. You do have the ability to configure a threshold, an inventory threshold. What this means is if your inventory in the warehouse hits the threshold that is assigned and an order exceeds that threshold, the order will be held within the Samplicity platform in a back order status pending final receipt of additional inventory or a transaction to go ahead and cancel that order or that line item. We have 3 actions that we can take for an order that has insufficient inventory. You can put the entire order on back order, which is our best practice. You can cancel the entire order, or you can fill and kill an order. Fill and kill means that you will fill any line items that have full stock, and you will kill a line item that has incomplete stock. So if your order contains product A and product B, and product A is completely available, but product B only has 4 units available and the order contained 5. If you set fill and kill, product B will be canceled off completely in your order. Select day. If your order in your program is set up for select day processing, what days do you want to allow for delivery? By default, our system is set up Tuesday through Friday for delivery. That means no order will be set for delivery on Monday, nor Saturday or Sunday. Finally, select day verification. If your program is set up for select day, do you want the contact center to do a call to the HCP to verify prior to letting that order go to the warehouse? Next part of the configuration will be order fulfillment. What is the contracted SLA? It is important that your SLA matches what your contract and your SOW says. These orders will determine the ship by date for the operations team, as well as our cutoff time. It's very important that your business rules match to what our cutoff time is so that we can make sure the warehouse understands what orders have to ship at what time frame. Next, you're going to set your carriers. If you've set a product to ship alone, then by default, when that order is split off and that item is now created in its own order, we will set a shipping method for that specific item. Otherwise, you'll set a shipping method and service for each of the product types you have configured for the program, as well as a priority. In this example, my non-controlled RX will ship UPS ground, signature required. If I only have literature in the order, it will go out UPS ground, no signature required. That's a benefit for our clients to be able to have alternate shipping methods to save on cost. The next section we'll move to is acknowledgement of content. If your program is set up for a rep, director practitioner, the EAOC option will become available. EAOC today is mapped to our SFA. We would expect to get an EAOC from the SFA platform. We also can do AOC follow-up letters. We can send up to 3 follow-up letters, and you can also determine whether or not an AOC is required. If you say no, then all the other questions go away. If you say yes, it'll ask you how many follow-ups you would like to do, and then on what days would you like to do those follow-ups. This is configurable, and it's based on the calendar days from the acknowledgement of delivery. So from the receipt of the delivery from the carrier, we will trigger a follow-up letter based on the configuration days that are set. We also have the ability to trigger a request to the call center. So in this section, you're going to configure whether or not AOC's calls are required. Again, if you say no, no other questions will be available. If you say yes, you'll send, and how many days from the AOD would you like to have the contact center make a phone call? It is important that you get this program cycle ID from the contact center. This program cycle ID will make sure that we trigger the right call into the right program within Salesforce. Invalid AOCs, very similar to AOC follow-ups. If you do invalid AOC, there is no grace period. The point the Simplicity DTP receives a invalid AOC, it'll trigger a call with a copy of the AOC to the contact center to make a follow-up call. This last section here, non-compliant AOCs, will determine when a doctor moves to the Do Not Honor list. Once that doctor is on the Do Not Honor list, every new order that comes in for that HCP will be rejected instead of on hold. The next section I'm going to talk about is signature verifications. Are signature verifications required? If they are, you can do your signature verification for order request or acknowledgement of content follow-ups. You'll set your monthly limits and your additional letters to be sent out if a negative SVL is received. Next, we'll move on to the templates. All templates are created within the platform. It is very important that we don't send our clients templates that have been triggered outside of the platform. So at this point, you will determine what items you want and what templates you want turned on. At any point, you can preview these templates, download them, and send them to the client. Your program does not have to be fully configured, nor does it have to be in a production state for you to generate the samples to send to your client. It is important that when you create these templates and they get signed off on the client, all documentation that is required for the print room is still generated. So you should still have your Print 104 form as well as your OWI, and you should work with the print room to create the job jacket so that they have that and they're aware of the letters that are coming for this specific program. Communications. We have a standard set of communications as well as configurable communications. For each of the communications, we'll configure how we want to send them. Do we want to send them email or fax or both? And then by default, mail is sent. What will happen is it will start, if you select multiple, it will start with one method of communication. And then if that method is not available, it will move to the next. And finally, it will push that via mail if no other option is available. We have two standard communication. One is blackout hold. So if an order goes on hold because of weather, do you want to email that notification or fax that notification, as well as verification hold. So if an order goes on hold because of an open AOC, we can trigger a communication to the order requester. And then your notification recipients. So we have order received, verification hold, blackout hold, order shipped, and AOC email. Do you want to send them to order requester? Do you want to send them to the sales rep? If the option is not available, then by default, the system is triggering those notifications. And then for reference, you can come in at any point and look at all of the communications that are sent from the platform. And then finally, the last section of a program configuration is your print room and sell sheet instructions. We will require print shop instructions as well as operations instructions, as well as a return to stock number for any item that the print room is printing. You would do this for each letter that has been configured for the program. At any point, as I mentioned earlier, you can validate the configuration. At this point, it's going to run through the whole set. It's going to determine whether or not you're missing a step in your setup. If you're missing a step in your setup, you will see a red icon, and this program will not be able to be pushed into a live status. Okay, for the last piece of this program setup, once a program has been configured and pushed live, you will run a program configuration report. That program configuration report must be printed and shared with your manager along with the configuration sheet. Both must be reviewed and approved to confirm this program has been configured appropriately. This program configuration report does take a minute or two to run because it's actually going through the entire configuration pages that I just completed to make sure that one, everything has been completed, and two, that it has all the appropriate details. You can run a program configuration report for any past configuration. So if you are in an audit and your auditor is looking for what the configurations were in 2020, you can run that configuration report and pull down that detail. Once a program is live, there are some standard notifications that come out specifically sent to the program mailbox. You do have the ability to take action on those notifications. So an example of that would be the invalid or negative SVLs. So if I go to communications and I search for an invalid SVL and apply my filters, I would see any SVLs that were negative. I can also look for AOCs that are under investigation. I can, in addition, look for any order that is in a potential lost in transit status.